So the New York Jets have made a decision at quarterback. Mike White, Volume 3. Mike White is back. Mike White will be the starting quarterback for the Jets coming up this weekend. And the plan, though, according to Robert Saleh, is that at some point this year, they are going to try and get Zach Wilson back on the field. That's the plan. But Mike White, coming off the loss at Minnesota, is going to be your starting quarterback at the Buffalo Bills coming up this weekend. So there it is, Brady Quinn. Mike White, Volume 3 for the JETS Jets this weekend at Buffalo. Here we go.
Yeah, look, he didn't play his best football, at least not what he did a couple weeks ago versus the depleted Bears. But still, at least in the passing game from that standpoint, seems to give them a little better chance, seems to be a little further along in his maturation process in the NFL. And rightfully so. He's been in the NFL longer than Zach Wilson. Look, I'll stand by what I've said before. I think Robert Saleh has kind of botched this whole scenario because they're still, if the playoffs were today, I believe they're still the 7th seed, so they'd still be the final spot in the playoffs making it. My issue is if they end up not being a playoff team, and let's say they get to 9 wins or whatever they get to, yet they have all this indecision about the quarterback spot heading into the offseason, what have you ultimately accomplished? Like this season to me was all about Zach Wilson, this team, taking the next step because it is a talented roster. They've battled through adversity with some injuries. And they've exceeded expectations, right? The total win-loss total was 5.5 wins before the season. They've already surpassed that. And now they're in a position where if they can make it in the playoffs, they far exceeded expectations of anyone out there. But if they don't, then you find yourself in this position where you can't replace Zach Wilson with drafting another quarterback. You could maybe look to the free agent market, but what once was looking promising and maybe Jimmy Garoppolo being a guy you'd want to go after, now he's dealing with a broken foot, and I think everyone would be curious as to if you're going to go pay him or bring him in when he's had all these injuries concerns his entire career. And plus, on top of that, you don't know that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't want to stay in San Francisco. Before that injury this past week, they were talking about keeping him in San Francisco. So I feel like they find themselves in no man's land in regards to the quarterback spot if this season doesn't work out where Mike White can take them to the playoffs, or I guess maybe Zach Wilson comes in and can save the day and take them to the playoffs. But the division's so competitive, and I do think you've got now what could be a really interesting AFC North finish, only because not necessarily the Browns. I mean, they're not mathematically eliminated. I don't count them as part of it, but the Steelers are picking up steam. The Baltimore Ravens still are finding a way of winning games, even though Lamar Jackson's going to be out most likely this week, maybe a couple weeks with that knee injury. But they're still in the playoff hunt. Obviously, the Bengals look fantastic. So things are looking a little different now in the AFC North where they might start competing for some wild card spots. And you've got more divisional play in the AFC East, so those teams are naturally going to start beating each other up. You know, Mike White gets the joy of trying to go up against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo this week. So good luck with that.
By the way, I hate to correct you like this on the air because you're my guy. You know that. And I don't want to do this. I feel like an a-hole for doing this. But I think you got a couple of numbers confused because I did sort of bring you into the sports betting world, the dark side, the dark underbelly of sports betting and live wagering and all that. Yeah. But I think you got something confused. You said that the Jets' over-under win total was 5.5
before the season.
That's not entirely true. That was actually the number of backup quarterbacks they were going to face this year. So I believe we're approaching the over on that as well too. So I wanted to clear that up here on the air.
My apologies.
And make sure we were good with that. And by the way, if you are a starting quarterback for either the Bills, the Lions, the Jags, the Seahawks, or the Dolphins, just put them in a bubble, all right? Yeah. Let's just everybody try and play it safe. Yeah, because the New York Jets have had themselves a hell of a run against backup quarterbacks this season. But don't bring that up to anybody because they get really offended by it. I don't. So you mentioned there were the goal here was to figure out whether or not you had a franchise quarterback. It's almost like, and this is going to sound crazy, but it's almost like in that regard, a team like the Bears are in a better spot heading into the offseason than the Jets. Because the Bears were in a similar spot. Do we have a franchise quarterback, or do we have a guy that we believe we can build around? And they've gotten their answer. Yes, they do. You can do something with Justin Fields. So at least they know that. They've got salary cap space. They're kind of playing with house money at this point. Well, to your point, now you get to the offseason. First of all, I don't think Zach Wilson's playing again this season for the Jets outside of injury. I don't think it's happening because if Mike White is still winning games, all of a sudden you're going to go from inactive, and now he's going to be the starter again. You're just this herky-jerky, let's throw a quarterback in. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it would not surprise me whatsoever if Zach Wilson is gone from the Jets this offseason and they go in a different direction. Like I've felt from the beginning that there was something more going on here. Maybe they want to keep him healthy. Maybe they want to be able to trade him and offload him in the offseason, but I just don't think we're going to see Zach Wilson again anytime soon. And I don't know why Robert Saleh keeps trying to sell that one.
It's probably to publicly give him some support, which, again, going back to what I said a few weeks ago, like I don't think they ever should have moved to Mike White. I thought it was imperative that they allow Zach Wilson to go through some growing pains. You have to go through it with him. You drafted him number 2 overall. You had to have understood that he was an unfinished product and he needed to play in order to become, or you should, get an idea of what he can become. And that's the problem is they find themselves now in this position where he's, quote unquote, getting better in practice. That's all BS. And meanwhile, they're trying to keep their playoff hopes alive.
What do you mean that's all BS?
It's just he needs live game reps. The things he struggles with, he's not going to face in practice. And that is some 260-pound dude who's going to knock your head off while you're trying to decide where to throw the football. Like, that's where you get better, when you're actually in a live game scenario and you have to make those decisions. When you throw on a red shirt, red jersey in practice, they can't touch you, you're not getting better. That's not football. That's not live game reps because you're truly not threatened. So, again, the reps he needs are there on Sundays, and he's not getting them right now. And I think it only makes their decision harder, or they've already made up their decision in their minds. And this is all just for the media, and it's all being thrown out there. But
by the way, this is I don't want to say that it's not nothing, but it's not that big of a deal maybe. But I do think it's kind of an indicator as to where this team's at from a team standpoint. Do you see what the Jets players were doing when they were getting ready to play the Vikings this weekend, when they walked into the game, what they had on?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, Mike White T-shirts. All right, we've seen this in the NFL before. When Carson Wentz got hurt the year after he came back when they won the Super Bowl, you remember Nick Foles was named starting quarterback, and all of a sudden, like, they had these St. Nick candles lit up in the locker room, and all the players seemed to really be excited that Nick Foles was back as the starting quarterback. It feels to me like the team has already kind of made their decision on who they want to roll with. So the idea that Robert Saleh, who was looking out for the betterment of the team, is going to take the guy that everybody loves and shut him down and bring back the guy that pissed everybody off and make him the starting quarterback, the whole thing sounds like BS. It just, none of it adds up. None of it makes any sense whatsoever. But you can't say that, because if you do, you're just a hater, you're being negative, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't make sense, whatever Robert Saleh wants to say. And I like Robert Saleh, but just everything about it doesn't add up to me. And so I just don't see how you go back to Zach Wilson with, a handful of games left and you're trying to make a push for a playoff run. Just seems awkward to me, but the hell do I know?
I'm with you, and I think it's tough, too, when you see all these players supporting Mike White. And now, look, it's the T-shirts. It is what it is. People feel like, okay, it's a say whatever you want. Like, it's a small gesture. It's meaningless. I don't know, man. When you've got guys who are veteran leaders, whether it's Braxton Berrios, CJ Uzomah, like those guys who I think have respect in the locker room, they've been around the league for a while. When they're out there kind of repping them, I don't know. I wasn't seeing it for Zach Wilson.
Yeah. What do you think Zach Wilson saw when he noticed those shirts on all those guys? How do you think that made him feel? Like, what did we talk? It's kind of.
I don't know. I mean, I'm honestly, I think he's spending more time around some of the Jets fans' moms right now. That's kind of more his thing. So.
Again, a great point. Happy Mother's Day to everybody there that supports the New York Jets fan base.